Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Vaughn Sports Madness. I'm Hiram Vaughn, your host for the day. A very pleasant good afternoon to you all, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for tuning in to this broadcast of episode 3 of Sports Madness. Again, I am Hiram Vaughn. I'll be your host for the day. Got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk NBA Conference Finals. Going to talk the NHL Conference Finals. I've got to go back and eat some words a little bit on some predictions that I made. That's one of the problems about working with and dealing in sports all the time is, sometimes you miss. And I missed a few times over the last couple days. The more we look at it and the more we kind of iron out the plan for how to do this show, the more it just seems like, every other day is going to be the way that it works out. In times where we have a lot of stuff to talk about, obviously we will increase that as we need to. But again, I do want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to this broadcast of Sports Madness. We got we're going to talk basketball conference finals, hockey conference finals. I've got some NFL news to talk about today. We got a little bit of Major League Baseball stuff to talk about. Got some soccer to talk about as well. There's a lot of, over the last few days, we've kind of had some overriding topics to talk about, just kind of some things that have been working, where they're just kind of major overriding stories. Today, we have a bunch of subcategories. It's like every episode up till now, I've been able to eat up entire 15-minute segments talking about one thing. That's not really going to be the case in this episode. We have a bunch of smaller things to talk about, kind of a bunch of ancillary topics, really, but enough of it that, it certainly warrants delving into. The first thing that we will talk about is the Eastern Conference playoffs. Toronto coming back and kicking it in high gear, winning Game 3 of that Eastern Conference final. They're a 7-point dog going into tonight's game, but they went and they certainly took care of business in Game 3, 99-84, and this is much more the defense that the Toronto Raptors fans had expected to see all along. Held Cleveland in check. They made Kyrie Irving look very average in Game 3. Bismack Biyombo, oh my goodness, 26 rebounds and 4 blocks, along with 7 points in that Game 3, showing that's the kind of performance that you need to have coming from Bismack Biyombo with the noted absence of Jonas Valanciunas. Biyombo coming in and just beastly on those boards. Offensive, defensive, it didn't matter. He had 18, I think. It was 16 or 18, one of the two, before halftime of Game 1. Just continued on in the second half, 26 rebounds, certainly in contention for a few others. There was a while where I was sitting here thinking, he may well get 30 rebounds in a game. It was the most rebounds in a game by a player since Wilt Chamberlain hauled in 32. So Bismack Biyombo coming up in a big way. But it's so crazy because the subplots are really kind of more overriding than the game itself. Cleveland, I felt like Cleveland in Game 3 was just absolutely disgraceful. LeBron James was flopping all over the place. His own teammate, Tristan Thompson, elbowed him in the face, and it got... I'm drawing a blank. It got... I can't remember the guy, but it got player from Toronto thrown out, and the referees fortunately went back, took a look at everything, and determined, you know what, it was his own teammate that did it to him. We're not going to tee this guy up. We're not going to throw him out. It was absolutely ridiculous, though. And then Dante Jones for Cleveland kind of goes after the Biombo family jewels and he doesn't get suspended or anything for excuse me, he doesn't get kicked out of that game, but he does get suspended for game 4. So Dante Jones will not be available tonight. That's not a loss for Cleveland. He's, for them, a scrub player who doesn't play any time anyway. And, you know, I guess a 1-game suspension there. It was an intentional hit, but I don't think it was necessarily all that egregious. Now, we'll talk about Draymond Green later. Toronto coach Dwayne Casey, though, talking about, you know, this, specifically talking about Bismack Biyombo, this is the performance that we've been waiting for this entire time. He finally arrived. He finally showed up. This is exactly what we're going for. We know that Biyombo's capable of this. His teammates know it. Opponents know it. His coaches know it. DeMar DeRozan was not a fan of Bismack Biyombo. He said, you know, he's nothing but a fouler. You know, if he goes in there, he's always going for the pump fake. But he just wasn't a fan of him. But, you know, as a teammate now he's my fouler, he's my faker, he's my shot blocker. You know, yeah, I love him now. He's kind of like Bruce Bowen in that. Man, people hated Bruce Bowen unless you were his teammate. Dennis Rodman, same way. God, people hated Dennis Rodman unless you were his teammate. If you're his teammate, well, daggum, he's your guy. Game 4 tonight. 2-1 favor Cleveland in the series. I said Cleveland in 5. I'm going to stick with Cleveland in 5. And, you know, I think Cleveland wins tonight's game in Toronto. I will say this. If Toronto comes back and wins, because they looked entirely different at home than they did in Cleveland. And we talked about that possibility as well, that they might. If Toronto wins tonight, then we've got ourselves an entirely different series, and I may have to kind of go back and reevaluate everything. I do think that Toronto wins tonight. I think Cleveland wins tonight, and I think they go back and they close out in Cleveland. I could be wrong. And if I am, then I am. Now, I think the Dante Jones suspension, warranted, yeah. I think they got that one about right. 1 game. It's not going to affect Cleveland one bit. He doesn't ever play. Now, going to the other side, Draymond Green's kick on Steven Adams, in my opinion, much, much more egregious than what Dante Jones did. It was intentional, it was deliberate, it was malicious, and the league is not going to suspend him for it. It is a clear case of bias by the league that they're not going to suspend Draymond Green, who has a history of this. He's done this several times before this season, going after players, kicking them in the jewels. And this is a clear case of bias. It is a clear case of the league showing favoritism toward a golden child. It is a clear case of ignoring facts. And it is a clear case of succumbing to pressure. Draymond Green deserved to be suspended. He deserves to be suspended the rest of the series. It was malicious. It was intentional. There was nothing basketball play about it. Dante Jones was making a basketball play on the game on the call where he got suspended, and he was rightfully suspended. Draymond Green was not making a basketball play. It was intentional. He went after Steven Adams. He got him. Risked severe injury. We remember what happened to Manu Ginobili earlier in the season. Ended up having to have testicular surgery over a similar play. And Draymond Green gets don't do it again. It's bogus. It's absolutely bogus. Draymond Green should be suspended. He should be fined. And he will be neither. Now, Dante Jones isn't exactly getting fined. He got fined $80 by the league for his punch. $80? I'm sorry. My bank account is nowhere near as big as Dante Jones. I could probably afford an $80 fine. Now, Draymond Green isn't even getting an $80 fine. He's getting nothing. And it's a clear case of bias. Clearly. It's the only thing you can say. And again, this is a frequent enough occurrence with Draymond Green, one that you have to say it's intentional. The other thing is that, Draymond Green says all the right things, and he builds up all this goodwill, and then he turns around and does something like this, and it happens every time. Draymond Green is the only reason he's not getting suspended is because he plays for Golden State. If he played for any of the other remaining teams, it would be a multiple game suspension. And I say that if LeBron James were to do the same thing, he wouldn't get suspended either. But it's not even like Draymond Green is the stud player of that team. So I don't understand it. He's got history. He's got a temper. He has issues. This was intentional. It was assault was what this was. It was assault. And it's bias and it's favoritism. And for those who are detractors of the NBA, and I love basketball, I love the NBA, I think it's the greatest sport on the planet. But for those who don't feel that way, this is their validation. They say that the NBA is nothing more than the WWF, or WWE rather, it's not WWF anymore. The WWE, that it's nothing more than that it's all staged, it's all fixed, and the league already knows in advance who's going to win. This is ammunition for them. It's a terrible call, it's a terrible decision. It should be at least a 3-game suspension. At least. And the only reason that it's not at least a 3-game suspension is because of which team he plays for. Plain and simple. Well, that's it for Section 1. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will have Section 2 of Vaughn Sports Madness in just a moment.